All right, let's dive right into this explainer. Today, we're going to look at the modern trucking fleet a little bit differently. We're actually going to treat it like a patient. Our goal? To diagnose a very specific, often completely hidden disease that just quietly eats away at a carrier's foundation. We're going to be exploring Jeremy Croft's brilliant insights on the incredibly high cost of operational chaos. I mean, just listen to the tension in this idea. When the whole fleet feels like an emergency, if you've been in this industry for more than a minute, you know exactly how that feels, right? It's a total high-wire act. Suddenly, every single load is urgent, every repair gets pushed off for just one more trip, and you start treating this constant, low-level state of panic like it's just a normal Tuesday.
Section 1, Pressure versus Chaos, the core conflict.
So we all know trucking has pressure built right into its DNA, but we really have to draw a hard line here between a normal business challenge and a genuinely dangerous operational state. Just look at the difference on this slide. On the left, you've got pressure. These are your external challenges: tight freight, bad weather, backed up shops. You can't control them. But on the right, that's chaos. And chaos is a self-inflicted systemic failure. It happens when you approve a rule exception just to save a load, and then you keep approving it until nobody even remembers it was an exception in the first place. You're effectively training your fleet to treat pressure as your actual policy.
Section 2, Cracking the Foundation. Let's look at how it starts. Because here's the truth of it. A solid operation doesn't just wake up one morning and decide to toss safety out the window. It happens incredibly slowly. Step 1, a planner asks a driver to, find a way to make a trip work, even when the clock is super tight. We all know that specific tone of voice dispatchers use, right? Step 2, the driver feels the pressure, bends the rules, and gets it done. Step 3, management just kind of looks the other way because, well, the customer's happy. Now, one single decision doesn't rewrite the manual, but it quietly signals to everyone in the building which rules actually matter when revenue is on the line.
And the exact same thing happens down in the maintenance shop. A truck comes in, the shop says they need time, but operations desperately needs that truck. So it leaves early. Maybe it gets through the week fine, or maybe a roadside inspector catches it. But as this quote captures so perfectly, the real danger isn't just the mechanical defect itself. The danger is that your internal maintenance process got entirely overruled. Operations basically just hijacked your risk management.
Once that process is broken, all these red flags start getting casually explained away. You start seeing serious moving violations, preventable damage, hard braking events, and it all just starts feeling normal. And worse, a high-producing driver might get a free pass simply because you're short on drivers. You basically stop managing risk, cross your fingers, and just hope your next bad day doesn't happen in public.
But here is absolutely the most crucial point. When you tolerate chaos, you don't just lose safety, you lose your very best people. Your veteran drivers are basically the canaries in the coal mine. They feel the foundation moving long before it ever shows up on a spreadsheet, and they leave. And who replaces them? Newer drivers. And while new drivers aren't the problem inherently, throwing them into an unsupported chaotic system practically guarantees that those violations are going to keep rolling in. Section 3, the paper trail, an investigator's view. Let's put on our investigator hats for a second, because when a carrier relies on just hoping for the best, eventually an auditor is going to come in and look at the worst. And by the time they're looking at your operation, they aren't looking at one isolated bad decision. They're looking at an overwhelming pattern. They cross-reference your inspection reports with maintenance records. They match ELD data against dispatch messages, repair orders, termination notes, the whole shebang. This massive mountain of paper reveals the absolute truth. Do you actually have a functioning process, or do you just react when a problem gets too loud to ignore? And that brings us to the harsh financial reality. Chaos absolutely does not send one clean invoice. The money you get from a saved load might look like pure revenue today, sure, but it's really more like a slow-burning fuse. The true bill, the turnover, the damaged equipment, the massive insurance hikes, that explosion comes months down the road, and it can literally cripple a business. What's really fascinating here is how fleets actively lie to themselves through what we can call false efficiency. You look out and see a terminal buzzing, trucks moving, dispatchers yelling on phones, and you think, wow, we are really getting things done. You confuse simply moving freight with actually managing risk. But let's be super clear about this. Motion is absolutely not the same thing as control. Section 4, taking control back. Fixing the disease. So how do we fix this disease and stop confusing motion with control? Well, first, you have to remember what you actually have your hands on:
Look, you can't control the weather, you can't control freight rates, and you definitely can't control parking. But you do have absolute authority over your internal foundations. You control your hiring standards. You control whether dispatchers respect the clock, whether your shop has actual teeth, and whether violations are meticulously reviewed or just casually tossed aside. To take control back, you really have to start thinking like that auditor. You need to pull your data before an outsider does. Look for patterns, not just people to blame. Ask yourself honestly right now, is the exact same truck showing up again and again on your deferred maintenance list? Or let's dig into the operations side. Ask yourself, is the same dispatcher constantly the one creating pressure? It is so important to realize that risk isn't always the driver's fault. Sometimes your planning process itself is manufacturing the danger right there on the front end. And honestly, we can trace that thread back even further to the root cause. Is a specific customer appointment forcing bad planning across the board? I challenge you to look at your data and follow that thread all the way back, because once you find the pattern, you are obligated to do something about it. But spotting the pattern isn't enough. You must execute the fix. If it's a knowledge gap, you retrain. A behavioral issue, you coach them. If the facts demand it, you ground a truck immediately. If dispatch is the problem, you overhaul your planning process. And above all else, you document the decision, because data without action is just trivia. Which brings us to a massive point about authority. A maintenance program means absolutely nothing if it gets overruled every time a load gets hot. Somebody in your organization has to be able to look at a truck, say, this truck does not leave, and have that decision stand like a brick wall. If operations can just override the shop without a serious high-level review, your safety policy is just a fantasy. And this exact same logic applies to hours of service. Dispatch pressure is usually pretty subtle, right? It's a quick text saying, "Are you sure you can't make it work?" or "We really need a favor on this one." That forces the driver into an impossible corner. The company needs to be the brick wall here. A driver should never carry the entire weight of saying no when they are out of legal hours. The answer isn't negotiation, it's better planning. Ultimately, this whole thing comes down to closing the loop. A chaotic fleet talks endlessly about their problems, but they just end up dumping those exact same planning failures right back onto the driver next week. But a controlled fleet? They lock the problem down. A repeated log issue gets a deeper dive. A planning failure gets fixed at the root level. They follow the problem until it is completely, officially closed. And that right there is what true operational control looks like. It's not flashy. It's actually much calmer than people think. Now, controlled operations still have hard days. Trucks break, mistakes happen, customers change their minds. But the fundamental difference is that a controlled operation doesn't let every single daily hiccup rewrite the company rulebook. Control is not soft, it is not slow, it is steady. I really want to leave you with this realization. The best-run carriers out there aren't always the loudest, and they aren't always the busiest. They're the ones where everyone, from the planner to the mechanic to the driver, knows exactly who has authority, where the line is drawn, and what happens if that line is crossed. That's when safety transforms from a catchy poster on the wall into the actual heartbeat of the company. Which leaves us with one final critical question for you to evaluate your own reality. Does your fleet run on a trusted process, or are you just waiting for the next emergency? Think hard about what your data is telling you today and take the necessary steps to turn that chaos back into control. Thanks so much for exploring this topic with us on This Explainer, and we'll catch you next time.